A hotel guest stormed off from my front desk, furious, threatening to report me to management in the morning. His complaint: I refused to give him a receipt for items he hadn't actually paid for yet. The next morning, he came back to make good on that threat, except this time he brought his boss with him. His boss, it turned out, was a guest at our hotel too. A repeat guest. A guest I knew well, and his boss was about to learn exactly how his employee had been speaking to hotel staff. This is a story about a hotel front desk, a guest who genuinely could not understand how charging items to a room works. And the single most satisfying professional vindication I have ever experienced, delivered, free of charge, by the man's own employer. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and let me tell you about the morning Karma showed up wearing a suit and asking pointed questions. If you've ever worked a hotel front desk, you know there's a specific category of guest interaction that exists nowhere else. The late-night store purchase confusion. Most hotels have a small store at the front: snacks, drinks, basic toiletries, the kind of convenience shopping designed for guests who realize at 10 at night that they forgot their toothbrush. It's simple. Pick your items, bring them to the desk, and pay one of three ways: cash, card, or charge it to your room. This particular evening, a guest walked in, grabbed a few items, and came to the desk. He complained briefly about the prices. Fairly normal. People always have opinions about hotel store markups, and I asked him how he wanted to pay. He chose to charge it to the room. This is completely standard. I had him sign the store slip confirming the items and the charge, told him I'd post it to his account, thanked him, and wished him a good night. Routine? Done in under a minute. Then he asked for his receipt. I told him I couldn't give him a receipt because he hadn't actually paid for the items yet. He looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. He explained that he needed the receipt for his company, some kind of expense reporting, presumably, which made sense as a reason to want documentation. What didn't make sense was his understanding of what had actually happened at the desk. He told me he had just paid. He'd charged the items to his room, which meant in his understanding that his card had been charged directly, right then, and he needed proof of that transaction. I want to be clear here. This is a genuinely common misunderstanding, and I've explained it dozens of times without incident. Charging something to your room doesn't process a payment in that moment. It adds the charge to your overall folio, your running bill for the stay, which gets settled in full when you check out. No money moves at the moment of the charge. There's nothing to issue a receipt for yet because nothing has been paid yet. I explained exactly this, calmly, clearly, the way I'd explained it to plenty of guests before him. He shook his head and told me he wanted his receipt. I tried again. I told him he hadn't paid for the items yet, but if he wanted a receipt right now, he was welcome to pay with cash or a card on the spot, and I'd happily print one immediately. He accused me of trying to charge his card twice. I told him, as evenly as I could manage, that I hadn't charged his card at all yet, not once, let alone twice. The entire conversation up to this point had been about the fact that no payment had occurred. He wasn't hearing it. He had decided, somewhere in the last several exchanges, that I was attempting to defraud him, and no amount of patient explanation was going to dislodge that conclusion. He stormed off, told me he'd be reporting me in the morning. I finished my shift, went home, and didn't think much more about it. This kind of thing happens. Guests get confused, guests get heated, guests sometimes threaten to report front desk staff over misunderstandings that have nothing to do with the staff doing anything wrong. You document it, you move on, you trust that management will sort out the actual facts if it comes to that. The next day, near the end of my shift, the lobby was unusually busy. A group was meeting up before heading out for work, which meant more foot traffic than usual at the desk. The guest from the night before walked up. He had someone with him. A man I recognized immediately, a repeat guest, someone who stayed with us regularly, roughly once a month for about a week at a time, for work. I knew him well enough to know his face, his habits, and the general professionalism he carried with him. The repeat guest, who turned out to be the first guest's boss, told me his employee had reported that he'd paid for items at our store the night before and that I had refused to give him a receipt. I told him that wasn't quite what happened. I walked him through it, calmly, factually, The same explanation I'd given his employee the night before. The items had been charged to the room, not paid for directly. No payment had occurred. A receipt isn't issued for a charge that hasn't been settled. I'd offered to process an immediate payment if he wanted documentation right then, and that offer had been declined in favor of accusations about double charging. I watched the boss's expression change as I talked. It was the specific look of someone doing rapid internal math, connecting what he was hearing to something he already understood about how hotel billing worked, and very quickly arriving at the conclusion that his employee's version of events had been, let's say, incomplete. You wanted a receipt, the boss said, for shit you haven't paid for yet? The employee tried the same explanation he'd given me the night before he'd put the items on the room. So technically he'd paid. The boss asked him directly, had he paid for the room yet? The employee admitted he hadn't. What followed was a brief, efficient explanation of exactly how hotel room charges work, delivered by a man who had clearly stayed in enough hotels to understand the system completely. Then the boss told his employee, in front of me, that to simplify things going forward, he was no longer permitted to charge anything to his room during company stays. The employee walked off. Boss turned to me. Sorry, he said. I explained to the new guys to get receipts when they pay for stuff out of pocket. I forgot that sometimes you have to pretend they're fucking kids who need me to explain how to wipe their ass. I felt that on a deeply personal level. I thanked him, we exchanged a few more pleasant words, and he headed off to wherever his morning was taking him. The employee did not return to apologize, ask further questions, or acknowledge the conversation in any way. I went into the system, found the guest's reservation, and added a note. No longer permitted to charge items to the room, small, quiet, permanent. The kind of administrative correction that exists purely so the next front desk employee doesn't have to have the same argument I just had. What I appreciate most about how this resolved is that I didn't have to do anything beyond tell the truth. I wasn't trying to get the guest in trouble with his boss. I was simply explaining what had actually happened, the same way I'd explained it to him directly the night before. The difference was the audience. He had decided in the moment that storming off and threatening to report me was an effective strategy. What he hadn't accounted for was that the person he reported it to would actually understand hotel billing and would ask him one simple question that exposed the entire premise of his complaint. He came to make me look bad. He left having been corrected in public by his own boss, using language that left absolutely no ambiguity about how unimpressed that boss was. There's a particular kind of satisfaction that comes from being right, calmly, consistently, and then watching someone else discover that you were right all along without you having to say a single triumphant word about it. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The boss did all the work, and he did it better than I ever could have. Sometimes the best vindication is just patience and an audience who already knows how things actually work. If this gave you the specific satisfaction of watching someone get corrected by their own boss in real time, smash that like button and drop a comment. What's the most satisfying workplace vindication you've ever witnessed? I want every story, and if you want more tales of patience, professionalism, and the occasional perfectly timed boss appearance, subscribe. New story every week. EU in the next one.